All right. For those of you who have already joined us, welcome to On the Go with a Workflow series. Today's session is with the teams at Hines. We're going to be talking about proving legal value fast, or I think as Evan McCord here put in his LinkedIn post, this can also be called two Evans and a Jen.
Mhm.
So if you haven't seen that LinkedIn post, go check it out. On today's show, we'll be talking about how Hines digitized their NDA process on Checkbox. We might get a little sneak peek live demo of the process itself, and then also hear about some unexpected outcomes that have surprised us. I think the tool now has been live for about 12 months, so think of this as past the honeymoon phase. You'll get some real feedback from a technology that's been out in the business for more than a year now. Just some quick stats, just to get your appetite whet. They've done over 1,000 NDA submissions in the first 12 months. Very positive feedback and comments from the business and vision to do much more as well. So we'll hear about a lot of that as we go through the conversation. In the last few months as well, I've started to see a bit of a trend of people even thinking about like CLM is not a platform, but sort of is a modular approach to contract lifecycle management. And so today we'll see a little bit of how intake and workflow can be considered separately from the concept of a repository. That's kind of what Hines has done here. And then also use the flexibility of like a workflow tool to maybe solve some non-contracting use cases too. And so to talk about this topic with me, I have Evan and Jen with me. Both of you, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I might start with some intros beyond just the name. So Evan McCord here, by the way, is the Senior Vice President and Head of Legal at Hines. He steers the legal ship for one of the world's top real estate investment and development firms. And one of the fun facts I found out about him recently, turns out stereotypes sometimes do come true. So for example, I'm from Australia, and it is true I do coexist with spiders in my home back in Australia. Not here in New York. No, I don't see any spiders here, but I did live and coexist with spiders. It's just what we do. But Evan here, he's from Texas and he grew up showing horses. So Evan,
I did.
just to,
I
just
am the
to,
stereotype, unfortunately.
yeah, I live with spiders. You ride horses. What's one pro tip, just to kind of as an icebreaker, that you would have for a brand new person to horse riding? I've never been. What tip do you have for me as a pro?
Tip for riding horses. I think sit up straight. Let's go with that. That
Okay.
usually works. The judges like that.
Okay, cool. I'll keep that in mind when I go for my first horse ride.
There
And
you
then
go.
we have Jen here as well. Jen Andrade is the contract administrator at Hines. She's critical in keeping contracting, moving throughout the process. But she's also more recently evolved to somewhat of a process engineer, if I can use that word, with Checkbox. So when she's not nerding out on contracts, Jen is also nerding out. And I hope I don't embarrass you here, Jen, but you're also nerding out at Comic-Con, San
Mhm.
Diego. Yeah. And so my question to you is, Jen, if you were to cosplay any character at your next Comic-Con, who would it be?
Honestly, off the top of my head, Jupiter from Sailor Moon.
All right. Awesome. I grew up watching Sailor Moon. Cool. All right. Well, really glad to have you both on the show. To jump into kind of the content now, I might start with Evan. So, for the people who have never heard of Hines before, can you provide an overview of the company and the legal team size? So, and the type of work that you do.
Sure. So, I mean, as we exist currently, where we have about $90+ billion worth of assets under management, we are headquartered out of Houston, but we're in over 30 countries globally. We're still privately owned by the Hines family, so that's a bit unique. We started in the late 50s. Our founder, Jerry Hines, started as a real estate developer here in Houston, and we grew through a lot of real estate development around the world. One of the pivots we've made aggressively in the last few years is trying to become the best kind of real estate investor and investment manager in the world as well, while still being fully integrated. So not only kind of in fund level investment management, but also executing on the real estate development at the ground level. The legal department is a sort of new addition relative to the history of Hines. We began about 12 years ago. I was the second attorney hired. We've now got about 30 attorneys with about 45 folks globally. And so, we're continuing to scale with the business. And does that answer all the questions?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And actually, as you talk about Hines and the history there, as a very well established company, and the legal team, as you said, has been around for 12 years. I'm curious, like, what was that driving force or moment for you that, really pushed you to think about delivering legal services differently in the last few years? Like, was it was it some sort of efficiency mandate, simplification mandate? Like, why has your work with Checkbox been strategically important to the business of Hines?
Yeah. So Heinz is a little bit different in that we didn't have the same types of mandates from on high that you might have at other companies. And there's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of it is just privately held. We were very decentralized in the way that we were managed. But because of that, it was fun to grow the department more organically, almost like building a law firm within the company. Now, the value that Checkbox provided was because as we're scaling and convincing our business stakeholders to continue to consult us and use us as we were growing, instead of top-down mandates, you guys just need to be quicker and faster and handle more. It was more like we've got to do that to be able to continue to show value. And so it was a necessary level up for us that we're not going to continue to get unlimited headcount to just be able to throw bodies at problems. As a result, we got to think through what the processes are that can really be taken into technology and made more efficient.
Mm. I think that's a very common trend. Often legal departments just don't scale as quickly as the business and the level of volume that comes into legal. And so if you can't solve it with people, you have to think about other smarter ways of doing that, whether that's adjusting
Exactly.
your, like your risk, maybe thresholds and appetite to shift resourcing a little bit, technology, process, right? And so I think you're going on that journey as well. Um, like, why start then with NDAs? I think a lot of teams might look at the NDA and say, well, it's a very simple use case. Like, why start with NDAs for you guys at Hines?
I think it's precisely because it's a simple use case that we started there. And it's both incredibly important and also to some extent, NDAs can be a bit of a fly buzzing around the head of folks in a legal department. Again, very important. It's just that they tend to be repetitive. You get a lot of the same questions. You always have a mix of third-party paper versus like your own forms. You've got people asking for the right form for whatever scenario. And over time, we had developed a lot of the answers to those questions, but it was a very manual process and it required a lot of knowledge transfer, just very manually. I did this, now you need to do this, and here's where all these files lie. And the other thing was that we needed more adoption for legal oversight of NDAs. But again, we were coming at it less with a thou shalt from on high that legal needs to look at every NDA, and more that legal is a great resource. You should use them to look at NDAs. I mean, some of
Mm,
my legal colleagues in the field may be a little like, I can't believe that happened, but businesses grow organically, and that's the way that we were operating. And so, to me, this was a perfect initial use case because it solved a lot of the email back and forth that happens for people that were already engaging with us on this process. And then secondarily, it really expanded the scope because you've got a lot of people of different generations now that just want to know the right thing to do, and they're really used to working in effectively workflow automation. They just don't know that that's what's going on in the background, right? I mean, they would rather than having to figure out who to email and go back and forth, they'd rather have a process, something they can just
mm.
upload or grab from. And that was the vision. That was the vision that you guys pitched us, and that Jen and others helped implement, and it's really worked well.
Yeah. I think one of the themes that I'm picking up from even how you thought about it, which I think is terribly important, by the way, you've had a lot of success in adoption. We'll talk about that in a second, but I think that's actually a byproduct of the attitude you have in servicing your internal clients. Because on one hand, like you can see there's legal teams or compliance teams that push change and rules onto their business, which then is going to be a much more tough conversation when you're very customer centric because you're basically trying to make the user experience easier for them to engage with legal. You're trying to be helpful to them. And because of that, you're going to get a much more positive uptake, right? That customer centricity really comes through in the way that you're thinking about, rolling out these changes.
Agreed. And even if you're coming at it from like a mandate perspective,
Mm.
just the focusing on the customer centricity will help you get adoption anyway. I mean, just making it nicer, easier, more pleasant. We've actually been really surprised at how much more engagement we've had because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jen, maybe I'll ask you a question too around the NDA process because you've been the brains in converting that manual workflow that has been strung together by a bunch of humans into an actual system, into an actual process. Jen, for you, like you've spent a lot of time with the process, and I think Shandy was owning it, or still do, I should say, in the business. What did the process look like beforehand, um, and why was this a problem, I guess? Evan talked a little bit about how a lot of people are doing it in a manual way, but what was the issue with that from the work that you did internally discovering the actual existing process today?
Well, the original process was honestly pretty chaotic. So in our legal page, we had a folder of templates, and with a folder of templates comes a lot of issues. There's no regulation, there's no way to make sure people are using the right forms. And I mean, there's also like a lot of use case scenarios, like different, like, oh, this one's slightly different, so you need this one. And there's a lot of, people don't really understand that. And so there's a lot of difficulty in kind of managing those templates. I know for Shandy, one of the big things that she's really liked about Checkbox is how she's been able to stay organized. When I started helping her with NDAs previously, she sent me her folder and it was just like a massive folder of documents. It was just red lines and clean copies and everything like that. And she just had that in her folder on her computer. And so everything was done over email. I mean, everyone knows that searching in Outlook is kind of a nightmare. It never actually goes the way that you think it's going to go. And so that was a big issue. And now with this automation, we have a much cleaner process and it's so much easier to find things and kind of know who's working on what.
Yeah. And for you all, NDA, I think a lot of the times when people think of NDAs, there's two halves to it. Like you're either creating like a self-service drafting of your own paper, but then there's also the other half, which is all of the review. The process you're describing is actually both, but skewed on more of the review side, right? Yeah.
That's
Okay,
right.
cool. So I'm super interested to see what that actually looks like. People talk about NDAs all the time, and every business has NDAs, but I feel like the process and the templates and the workflow is actually quite different. And even though it can be a pretty simple document, it can be quite complex when you look at the workflow. The legal document is simple. The business workflow can be complex, especially when you're Hines and you have a global business and you have all these different types of use cases and geographies to wrangle around. So I would love to see a demo if you're up for it, Jen, of the tool that you've built. And for the record of people who are dialing in today as well, I haven't actually seen it myself. So I'll be seeing this for the first time with you all. So Jen, I'm excited. If you're ready for it and if you're comfortable, I would love to see a short demo to bring this to life.
Yeah, happy to do it. So first, I'm going to show you guys, this is our dashboard. So this is kind of like what we have, like what's been done so far. And then you'll see there's some tests that have been done by me. That's me right now, actually. One of the things I really like about the dashboard is how it can be customized and how, I've kind of adapted it based on Shandy's needs and kind of, like what we want other people to be able to see. And so of course we have our start button here. So I've actually already started the NDA that I'm gonna kind of walk through. And so I did want to go over more of the generation side, but I will talk about the upload as well. Um, so here we have the option to create an NDA using the Hines template or uploading a third-party paper. And then this is a new section that we've added pretty recently where sometimes after we have that initial review from Shandy, people will come back and have additional questions. And so instead of having them upload a completely new request, I've added this so that they can just kind of refresh what they've done previously.
Mm.
Okay, and then for the next page, you just have to identify who is the disclosing party, and then we have a lot of different options for the purpose, which what's really nice about this is in the templates, I have like a separate definition for these different things. So like the text that shows up in the Word document is definitely a lot more descriptive than just these like basic examples. But we've also provided some little descriptors here to kind of assist the person using the tool.
Jen, this is again a really good example of how customer centric you all are because instead of putting the legalese and the complexity of all the detail, which for the business user, they don't need to worry about. That goes into the template, that goes into the NDA, but you've simplified it here in the language you've used on the interface, right?
Yeah, and I mean for me, I am not an NDA expert, and so it's a lot easier for me to kind of look at it in this perspective.
Mm.
So I think that's why it's essential that I work with Shandy and like getting other people's opinions has been really beneficial to me as well.
Mm.
Okay, and then from here, we have our Hines entities. Right now, our list is reduced, but it can grow. And we've also have a section identifying the different markets, just so we kind of know where the business is coming from. And then I used Evan as our signer for this one. Okay, and then from here, you identify the counterparty, and we've left this as a really open-ended part of the form because we know a lot of the times the business person might not actually know like the actual legal name of the counterparty or their address and stuff. So there is an option to add this information, but they can also leave it blank so that the counterparty representative can take care of that. And so from here, you will define the counterparty representative, just kind of put their name and their email so that they receive a copy of the NDA. Oh, right. So this is what the NDA looks like. So you'll see here it has the Hines address based off of the region and then the description of the counterparty as well, and then kind of some of those fields that I filled out. Like a very nice and clean copy of this. And then you'll see here that for the counterparty, we have these two terms undefined. And that's solely because we don't know who's signing. So we want somebody else to have that capability to add that information. Okay. And then from here, you just hit next.
And does the
And
workflow do that, by the way, Jen? Like, when you say someone else has the ability to put in the details that are missing, does it route to an external, counterparty for them to fill it in
Mhm.
via checkbox and then that will regenerate it with the fields filled in?
Exactly. And
Amazing.
so, yeah, from here, you'll see this is kind of what the general business person will see. They kind of get a notification that this has been sent off, and then from there they can go. So here I'm pretending to be the counterparty. And so we have added like just a little text kind of explaining what the NDA is. And then here's the NDA that they can download and review. And so we
Hmm.
have a couple options here for them. So they can execute the NDA as it is, like they're good with everything. There's also the option to make minor changes. And then there's the option to redline the NDA and send it off to legal so that legal can take a good look at it. One of the things I like is having these minor changes because these are things that we do not need to review again. And so these are pre-approved and things that we've already walked through before. And so from here, you just add the signer. And then once that information has been updated, this is the option to update that information. So like if I want to change the state, if I want to change how many years, that can all be done.
Mm,
And then from here, the counterparty representative sends it back to the business person, and then they'll get a clean copy of the NDA. So this is the NDA as updated. So let's see, in here, I updated state, so it's the state Oregon now, and then you'll see that now there is a proper signature block for the counterparty.
I
Um,
see.
and so then you send it back, and then the requester will receive that finalized NDA, be told that it's been approved by the counterparty and it's good to go. And that's it.
Nice. Very cool. Again, I really like how you've built out so many, I guess like back channels or edge cases that allow people to flow through and get to an endpoint rather than these like dead ends of pick A or B and things that fall outside of that probably go back to a manual process. You've actually built some of those safeguards to say, actually, this is for an existing NDA. I just want to make an amendment, or I don't have details for the counterparty. Like you've built all these kind of channels so that almost like the water of the water flow can continue flowing all the way to the end. So that's really, really great to see. Um, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit actually and ask you like how has this been for people? Have you had many people come back and say like run into issues, or have people made their way through pretty smoothly?
Yeah, it's been a pretty smooth process. Like there was a while where we weren't hearing anything, and at first I was like, is that good? Is that bad? And it was good. That's what it turned out to be, is that it turned out to be
Yeah.
really good. People are happy with the tool. They find that it's pretty easy to use, and if they ever need help, there is a legal NDA email that we created, and I actually manage it, and so I'm always responding to people when they need assistance. But yeah, we haven't really had any complaints, so I'm like, oh, that's great. That's,
Yeah.
that's the last thing I want to hear. So it's been a really good process.
That's awesome. And so that the one you just showed us is, of course, for the drafting of an
Mhm.
NDA and then the interaction with the counterparty and then the execution all the way through to the end.
Yeah.
But most of yours is review. So, just talking it through, instead, you would what, upload a reviewed or redlined NDA, and then the tool kind of finds its way to the right person for the review and handles the versioning and the back and forth. Is that what happens for the review side, or what have I
Yeah,
missed?
essentially. So the business person will upload the NDA, and then Shandy will receive it and be able to redline inside of the tool, which
Hmm.
I really like because it's all, kind of centralized. And so one of the things that she likes to do is provide a redline copy as well as a clean copy. And so right now, what we're doing is downloading that redline version and then kind of accepting all the changes so that they receive a clean PDF as well as the redline so they can kind of see what kind of updates have been made.
Okay, very cool. That looks great, by the way. Well done. I can see why it's been so successful. Uh, your role, I'll stick with you for a minute, Jen. Like your role has changed quite a bit through this process because rewind, a few years ago, you were a contract administrator, and you were sort of helping the process move along manually, like you're doing all of the manual bits of the workflow. But now you're also a checkbox builder, right? Because you built
Yeah.
that tool that we just looked at, that demo.
Yeah,
You
with
did
lots
it.
of help, but yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, just want to make sure. So you built that tool. Because for the people who may not be familiar, Checkbox is not an NDA tool, to be super clear. We're a no-code platform. And so think of it as like a set of digital Lego blocks that you can connect together and you can build whatever legal compliance processes that you have that's custom without needing to code at all. So Jen's been a Checkbox builder. She built the demo that we just saw. So you've kind of you're still a contract administrator, but you've now taken on this new, I would say, more strategic role because rather than being the person that executes the process manually, you're now like a layer higher where you're streamlining and digitizing the process itself, and so the system is doing many of the manual administrative like elements that your role used to do. Um, how has that transition been for you? Like what has been your experience going from pure contract administrator to then learning checkbox?
It's been really fun, honestly. One of the things I really like to do is find efficient ways to do things. And so this has made things a lot simpler for me. I did go through and I did the certification for the app designer and the expert app designer. And so, going through those certifications actually really helped me get a good understanding of what Checkbox can do. I know when you see a demo, you're like, oh, I could probably do that. But when you're actually building it, it takes a lot more thought than, what you would
Yeah.
think. And I think one of my favorite things about working in the tool is how accessible the knowledge base is. Like I keep that tab open. Like I am always looking, and even if I know how to do certain things, I like to have that on hand, if I need a refresher or I need to kind of fine tune something that I'm trying to work on. And so actually now that, we've built this tool and we have it in process, we are looking to do more things with Checkbox. And so I am, kind of trying to hone in all of these skills and make sure that I can make a tool that works really well.
Yeah. I was speaking with another customer the other day, and they were still sort of early on in their journey, and in their minds they thought, oh, when we build a workflow and launch it, it's sort of set and forget. And that's largely true for maybe 90% of it. But in your experience, even for the NDA tool, you've made some iterations, some changes since launch, right? You've been improving and iterating it since. Um, like for the people who might be new to workflows, why wouldn't it just be set and forget? Like, what are driving some of these changes? Is it user feedback? Is it business changes? Like, walk us through like the life cycle of post-launch of a workflow as well.
Yeah, so honestly, it's a combination of things. So,
Mm.
we've gotten some feedback on, how people would like to receive some information. So we've made some updates there. And then I also really like getting Shandy's feedback and I like knowing kind of what she wants to see. And so with her help, I've been able to kind of update the inbox so she knows what's going on, like what NDAs she hasn't looked at, what she has looked at. She also had me do some mods to the dash, and then at one point we did not ask for a project name on the NDA, and so it got a little crazy. And so that was an update that we made. So now it's definitely a lot more organized than it was previously. So I mean, a lot of the changes are just kind of like what's going on for the user as well as some business changes. We had some restructuring, and so we had to kind of modify some of the language that we were using in the tool and some of the business addresses and things like that. So yeah, I think it's just like a constant cycle. There was one actual definition that I had to update. I think that one that I used, the construction one, like there was a modification that we needed to do in the template. And so that was like a
Mm.
newer addition that we did. So yeah, things are always ever changing. It would be amazing if you could be, done and forget, but it's not really ideal.
I feel like done and forget though might be a bit of a misconception because if you're going to be innovating and always improving process, like nothing in business and nothing in the market is ever static, right? And so I think the best tools are ones that are probably adapting with the business and feedback and improving with the times. And so actually change is a good thing. I think the key thing to hang your hat on is how easy or how hard is it to make those changes? Because I definitely know there are legal teams who might sometimes when they need to make system changes, go back into the IT queue. And by the way, our IT folk are like fantastic business partners, but they're very busy, right? And so they've got a long queue, they're servicing every part of the business. And if legal comes with some sort of change, that can sometimes take months, right? Or years. And so change is good so long as you can keep up with the pace. And so I think you've found a pretty good cadence in making these changes, and it's been pretty easy for you.
Yeah, whereas just to jump in here,
Yeah.
making a change to a form or adding really another use case. So I mean, it doesn't look like a new form to the user, but adding a new use case, the construction design form. I think I emailed Jen in the morning and she said it's done by the afternoon. So, you know, that was pretty typical.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, Evan, actually, back to you for a second. Let's talk a little bit about adoption. We kind of hinted at it. It's been really great, but give us some details. Like, how has it been? What has the business been saying? Walk us through, what the uptake has been since launching the tool 12 months ago.
Sure. I think there's kind of there's two prongs to that answer. One is we've mentioned our contracts manager a few times, and she is, of course, an unsung hero like Jen and others, kind of just working behind the scenes all the time. And so I think she wouldn't mind me saying she wasn't crazy excited about introducing a new kind of process and piece of technology to her process that she'd already kind of thought about. But she has been uh, I think more than pleasantly surprised. I mean, she's now effectively an evangelist for the whole thing. She's loved it. A lot of that is also credit to Jen and her ability to actually execute on the idea and to take the feedback from our contracts manager and implement it really quickly. So, I mean, you've got the internal stakeholder adoption that matters, right? I mean, it's got to actually make their lives better, or what are you really doing? I mean,
Mm.
there's a lot of other ways to spend time and money. On the other hand, on the business side, um, I think I don't remember the exact numbers. Jen may be better at that. I think I had relatively low expectations, especially because the NDA process, the NDA review process was something that was effectively optional for the company. And and so I didn't know what would happen as we said, all right, steer you guys over here, please use this. But we announced it on a strategy call, and it very quickly took off. And I think again, that's it's good and bad. It's given our contracts folks a lot more work to do to move things along quickly. But again, they've now got a tool that allows them to not waste a bunch of time, and they're just moving through the actual substance of it and then moving on. And so I think instead of it being like, a few hundred uses over a couple months, it was more like a few thousand uses. And that to me was frankly surprising. I try to be a pretty hopeful person, and I just didn't think it was going to go that well. So again, and I was pushing this as, let's use this as a use case so that we can pitch it to the business and even our own internal legal department about why this is just an idea. It doesn't need to be the exact implementation. It doesn't need to look like this workflow, but something like this can work for a bunch of different options. And we've got 3 or 4 of those in the pipeline right now.
Yeah, well, that's really, really cool. I know that some people on the call right now are some existing Checkbox customers, and they're about to go live as well with their NDA use case. I'm sure they're really excited to follow suit with your success as well. Do you know what you did in particular? Was it like that drove that? You said you announced a strategy at this strategy sort of session. Did you use some sort of like what's the magic here? Can you share some of the secret?
Well, I wish there was magic. I mean, a good comms plan is always really helpful. So utilize your internal comms folks. Just think about the change management that needs to be done. We had both a post to our written intranet, like look what is here now. Look how the legal team is innovating and making your life better. That was reinforced by me getting on a company-wide strategy call slot. I took 5 minutes and just said, I guarantee you all that these are things that you deal with all the time and you don't know what to do. And I'm telling you here, I've got a solution for you. It'll be quick and fast. And then our team had to back it up, and they did. So, I mean, I think a lot of it is make sure that the business folks know it's important enough to give you a little bit of airtime, and then make sure you're ready to go and back up the promises that you make as you pitch it.
Yeah, amazing. And Jen, I think you mentioned earlier that whilst you were the person who was building and championing a lot of the build in Checkbox, that it's a team effort. I'm sure not just on the Hines side with Shandy and Evan and other people involved as well. But I know that you worked with Uplevel Ops. They're a great partner of you and great partner of ours, and also the Checkbox team. Can you like because a lot of the times when people look at these types of technology projects, one of the questions that I hear all the time as people embark on that journey is who do we need on our side and what is the team that wraps around that, right? Like, is this all us? Or are you going to help as a vendor? And so like walk us through a little bit as to the people involved in going from idea to implementation? Like, what are people's roles and what's been your experience?
Yeah, so it's honestly been really helpful having Brian and Sumi from Uplevel. They are so knowledgeable. I think they've even gone past me in the certifications. They've done the master course, which is even
Yeah.
more intense. I've heard them talk about it and how intense it is, and they they have a different perspective. So they definitely look at things very differently from me. And so it's really nice to have somebody that I can kind of run ideas off of or just kind of brainstorm and get new ideas. They've definitely helped me figure out ways to, rethink how we do things. They've been super helpful. And then the checkbox team, when I have big issues that I can't fix, contacting support is actually really nice because I actually get a response. And I've been successful in getting help from, I think there was someone named Simon. He's worked with me a
Yeah.
lot. He was super helpful. And then right now we have Lane as our customer success manager, and she's really helpful and knowledgeable and kind of like, making sure we're keeping things moving and, kind of checking on us and just making sure that, we're still using Checkbox as we intend to. And so I think it's really important to have those different groups of people working together just because I know that sometimes I think about things and I may kind of implement it in like the one of my teachers used to say brute force, like make it kind of hard. But like it's a simple idea, but then when I put it down, it's like a little bit hard. But once I start talking to people, they kind of help me simplify this and kind of find a good workaround or, find an easier solution for what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that as maybe consumers or like if you're a really small business, often you buy software like SaaS and you expect for you to just kind of be the users and the implementation person for that. But often in, businesses that are looking at transformation for legal and compliance processes, you really do want to build a team around it, right? Because there is a lot of consideration, a lot of expertise. There's a lot of people that you can lean on to really guarantee that success in both the implementation and then post implementation. So I'm glad that you guys did that really really well. I'm gonna throw it back to you, Evan, as we get to the home stretch of this. Um, you mentioned that you've got three or four other ideas or vision for Checkbox. NDA was your first one. You never bought Checkbox just to do NDAs, right? It was part of a broader, like a broader ideal of how legal should be run. NDAs just happened to be the first one. Like, what other use cases do you have on the roadmap for Checkbox? Walk us through some of them.
Sure. Being an international company and then being privately held, we deal with a lot of KYC or know your customer requests. So that has become an overwhelming workflow that was manually handled for a very long time. And some of that is just because it's grown on its own outside of our control. So we're working currently on a big intake process for that. So mostly just kind of an intake portal. Um, and that's coming along well. I think we're going to launch that relatively soon. Uh, Jen, and she can talk about this more herself, is from ground up doing a legal signature portal. We have to, for a variety of reasons, we need signatures in the US for foreign related projects.
Mm.
And so obviously, we need to be organized about that. And we've got something currently on a different platform, and it's fine. It's clunky. Whatever. And so I think that Jen's building this out, and again, I think we're relatively close to being able to go live with that as well. So we've gotten some easy things identified that we think that we can either with some outside help on the KYC or completely internally do on our own, and mostly for kind of intake and organization. And then we've got a really big document generation workflow that we're thinking about importing at some point, just because we've seen the capabilities of Checkbox. That's probably more like a phase 2 down the line, just because it is a really big bite of an apple. But it'll be something we think about. Plus, I guarantee if we thought about it, we could think of probably 5 or 6 more. We just need to, we need to give Jen a weekend here and there.
Maybe the weekend to go visit Comic-Con San Diego.
That's right. That's right.
It tends to happen like that. It's a bit of a snowball, right? Like it's a bit of the art of the possible. Once you get the first one out, you start to see vision for other use cases. And as more people start to interact with these tools, they will also have ideas of how to streamline a lot of the manual sort of trudge work that they're doing day to day. Um, okay, that's really interesting. So you've got some KYC, you're going to extend on the document automation piece as well. One of the things I sort of opened up this session with was the idea that sometimes people look at contract lifecycle as like a full platform play from end to end, one system does everything. But you've kind of adopted an approach where you're now building a lot of your almost like pre-signature or pre-execution workflows in a workflow tool like Checkbox. And then I know you have your own repository as well. And obviously the idea is to integrate the two and give you that full lifecycle. Do you have any strong opinions or ideas as to why this makes sense for you over, maybe the alternative approaches?
Yeah, I think, um, and some of this is credit to Uplevel and their vision and advice, but I
Mm,
have seen it now borne out in reality. Um, the the contract review and workflows that are a lot of times built into CLMs are great. They are generally fit for purpose, but they're also kind of, pretty solidly built, and it's not something that you can modify. You kind of need to
mm,
force your business processes into their system. What we have here is you can think of more like we think of our CLM more as like a backend repository that helps us do analysis and tracking and things like that. But a lot of the front end and potentially back end, but really the front end could be designed as not just like a white labeled Hines version, but like, I mean, that's the way it would feel probably to the customer, but mostly as a way to design the exact review process that we want because it
mm,
works. And then we don't need to be caught into an ecosystem that we kind of have to make trade-offs for. This one feels
mm,
great because we can as much as we can modify it. I mean, that's our really only our limit is just kind of what our imagination is and how we want it to work, which is really nice. And again, it's probably, I'm dangerous because I don't really know how to execute on all this. I just know what might be possible. And so there's a lot of like, well, can we do it this way? I would really like it to come out this way. And to Jen's credit, she's done it every time. But again, that's also to Checkbox's credit. You guys are really flexible and able for us to make it look the way we want and function the way we want.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think either you're changing your business processes to fit the software, or the software is, fitting your processes. And I think
Correct.
to your point, like when you buy a platform, a lot of the maybe steps or the hard-coded elements of that forces you to then compromise on your own internal processes. But when you start with like I said before, like a digital set of Lego blocks, then you can design that process however you want it for Heinz specifically, right? So,
Exactly. I mean, to me, a nightmare scenario is that we've all been faced with it, where somebody's looking at it and you're like, well, the computer won't let me do that. And so then what you do is you have people just saying, well, then go around the computer. I'll just email who I know. And then at that point, why have you even done what you're trying to do? So I want to try to keep it like if we're going to do it, let's do it well and try to actually allow every scenario that we can to be run through the system. And that's where Jen, even if she's not building an, phase one, her ability to continue to iterate is super valuable.
yeah, that's super insightful. Very last question. For those who might just be starting their journey with all of this, they're probably going to have to go through the same process that you went through, which is start with, understanding your own business problems, the drivers, the processes, right? You don't start with the tech, you start with your business and your needs. But at some point, they're going to think about, well, I need the technology to operationalize this vision. Now, you went through a RFP when you was evaluating Checkbox, right? You were looking at other providers as well. Can you share a little bit as to some of the evaluation criteria that you were considering when you did evaluate Checkbox and other providers, and what ultimately was it that excited you, I guess, that made the difference for you when you ended up choosing, Checkbox?
Um, I think I mean, the big pitch that we saw from you all that really solidified it was, oh, I think it really is as simple and straightforward. And I understand there's training that needs to go along with it. So again, I don't know fully what I'm talking about. I know there's some training, but you guys have made that easy. But it really is as simple and straightforward and as flexible as the demo makes it seem. And to some extent, that's just really been proven out. Some of the others that we looked at had elements of it. And I think one of the things that you all have done well is you've kind of taken the ease that is pitched in other environments and really brought it out to its logical conclusion of like, actually, we'd really like regular, relatively untrained people to be able to utilize this in a way that requires us to kind of help when needed, but not to be the gatekeepers of everything. And we've seen that. I know Jen's put in a lot of effort and work to become an expert at it, but it's not like it was something that required, years and years of training for her to be able to execute on.
Yeah, because Jen, you're not a software developer, and you've never coded anything, right? Prior.
No. No.
Okay. Just in case you're like a secret, you're actually, this is super easy because you actually code. No. All right.
No, I
That's
don't.
Well, that's, to share a little bit of the story of Checkbox, we started the company because we saw such a big dissonance between like the need for digitization and the skills that was in the market to actually get there. And so we came up with this idea of no code before no code was even a label, by the way. And we thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if we could empower the process and subject matter experts to do it themselves, to like solve their own problems. And so that was really the DNA and the start of our company. So I'm glad that that's come true for you all here.
Right.
Maybe last question for Jen to end off as well. Like what tips do you have for people who are embarking on this journey? Like Evan gave some advice around how you should think about, like selecting a partner. What about for you? Like as someone who's in the trenches, building processes, working with the process owners, what's your parting advice for people who might be on the same journey? And I know there's some in the audience today. So what's your advice for them?
Yeah, for sure. My advice is take the training material seriously. I know sometimes when we're doing trainings, we have a tendency to just kind of gloss over it, but I built those workflows as if this was something our team was going to use so that I knew it was going to work. I knew it was going to look the way that we wanted it to look. And so I think taking that seriously and really putting time into it is really important. And I've already mentioned how much I love the knowledge base, but definitely take a look at that. And I mean, if you have an idea of something that you could do, it's probably in there. So it's good to always have your resources.
Amazing. All right. With that, Evan and Jen, thank you for being such incredible partners. I look forward to continue to work with you all and be able to expand out the use cases that, Evan, you just talked about. And for everyone else, thanks for joining us today. And hope you have a great rest of your week. Thanks, Evan and Jen. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Go with the Workflow. If you found it valuable, you can subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app like Spotify or Apple Podcast. Also, please consider giving us a rating or leave a review, as that really helps other listeners find the podcast too. That's all for now, so we'll see you at the next episode.